The neighborhood of Harmony Grove looked like the American dream printed on a glossy real estate brochure. Rows of identical beige houses with lawns trimmed to military precision. American flags fluttering at exactly 45 degrees on approved poles. And kids riding bikes in coordinated safety helmets. But beneath that postcard perfection lurked the real landlord, the Harmony Grove Homeowners Association. 5 years under President Karen Thompson, and the rules had grown thicker than the homeowners' insurance policies. No holiday lights before the second Thursday in November. Grass must measure precisely 2.5 inches, measured with the official HOA ruler sold for $29.99. Solar panels? Only if they matched the approved beige swatch. Trash cans had to vanish into garages by 7:01 a.m. or face the wrath of a bright orange violation sticker. Jordan Hale, 35, single by choice and CFO at Apex Innovations downtown, had bought her corner lot 3 years ago, thinking the gates meant safety. Instead, they meant surveillance. Every morning, she woke at 5:30, brewed one perfect cup of black coffee, and drove her spotless SUV to the office where she managed millions in company assets. But at home, the mailbox was a war zone of pastel envelopes demanding payment for non-compliant porch decor, unauthorized herb planter, and once, hilariously, excessive single-woman solitude because her balcony tomato plants apparently attracted undesirable pollinators. Jordan paid every fine without a word. 3 years. $8,500 a month on average in special assessments and penalties funneled straight into the HOA Community Beautification Fund that somehow always ended up repaving Karen's driveway or buying new golf carts for the board. She never complained, never posted on the neighborhood app, never called a lawyer. She simply wrote the checks, smiled at the monthly courtesy visits, and kept her mouth shut. Because somewhere along the line, she had absorbed the same twisted logic the rest of the cul-de-sac swallowed. Good neighbors comply. Successful neighbors pay extra. And single successful women, they owe the community twice as much. Her house itself was flawless, minimal, modern, peaceful. One home office, one balcony where she grew herbs and read quarterly reports on Sunday mornings. No pets. No loud parties. No husband to mow the lawn at dawn like the HOA handbook recommended. The solitude drove Karen insane. Every inspection came with a little dig. Still no ring on that finger. Jordan? A husband could help with compliance. Jordan just nodded, wrote another check, and went inside. The board knew she could afford it. They knew she wouldn't fight. So they kept raising the bar, lowering the grass tolerance, adding new fees for emotional wellness of the neighborhood. Whenever Karen felt her authority wobble, Jordan became their personal ATM, quiet, reliable, never late. The annual holiday potluck was supposed to be the crown jewel of HOA Harmony. String lights, approved warm white only. Potluck dishes judged by Karen herself. And a mandatory gratitude circle where everyone praised the board. Jordan arrived at 6:15 carrying a perfectly plated charcuterie board because showing up empty-handed earned a $20 fine for lack of community spirit. The community center smelled of cinnamon candles and passive aggression. Karen Thompson stood at the head table in a festive red cardigan, clipboard in one hand, fake smile dialed to 11. Beside her sat her inner circle, board members who hadn't paid a fine in years and a few neighbors who knew better than to cross the queen. Jordan, darling, Karen sang out, voice dripping honey poison. So glad you could join us. Still single? No husband to help keep that yard in compliance? Must be lonely up there on your balcony all by yourself. The room went dead quiet. Forks hovered. Wine glasses paused mid-sip. Everyone suddenly very interested in their mashed potatoes. Karen's eyes glittered with that practiced cruelty she reserved for anyone who threatened her throne. especially successful single women who didn't need a man to validate their existence. Jordan set her charcuterie down slowly, met Karen's gaze, and spoke in the same calm tone she used in million-dollar boardrooms. Still single. Yes. Still paying your fines. Karen? The $850 I transfer every month to the beautification fund, the one that somehow paid for your new golf cart last quarter. Should I pull up the bank statements right here? The silence was absolute. A child dropped a cookie. Someone's wine sloshed. Karen's perfectly glossed lips parted, but no sound came out. Jordan kept going, voice never rising. 3 years. $148,000. Every absurd rule you invented. Every selective enforcement while your friends' lawns look like jungles. I've been the community's favorite cash machine. And tonight you want to mock me for being alone? Cute. Karen's face flushed the exact shade of the violation stickers she loved so much. This is hardly the time or place. Jordan, we're celebrating community. But her voice cracked on the word community like it had suddenly grown teeth. Jordan picked up her plate, turned to the room, and added softly, "Funny how community only flows one direction around here." She walked out before anyone could reply. The weight she'd carried for 3 years suddenly lighter than a charcuterie board in her hands. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and suppressed rage. 3 years of silence detonated in 30 seconds of truth, and somehow she was already the villain. Her phone started buzzing before she even pulled into her garage. Texts from neighbors she barely knew. All variations of, "You really upset Karen," and "We need to talk about your attitude." Jordan silenced the notifications, poured herself a glass of wine, and for the first time in years felt something close to freedom. They had made her the bad neighbor for speaking the truth. Fine. She'd been paying for that title anyway. The silence lasted exactly 3 days. Then came the official HOA email from Karen. Mandatory emergency board meeting Sunday. Your presence is required to discuss recent behavior and potential covenant violations. Jordan almost laughed. Emergency. Of course. Guilt was the HOA's favorite enforcement tool, right behind orange stickers. That night she couldn't sleep. Instead, she opened every pastel envelope she'd saved. Every bank transfer. Every ridiculous fine. $148,000. Enough for a down payment on a second home or a very comfortable retirement. Instead, she had funded Karen's reign of pastel terror. The memories flooded back. Thanksgiving when Karen praised another neighbor's family values while quietly fining Jordan for excessive independence. The time her herb garden was declared a nuisance because it didn't match the approved plant palette. Every potluck where Karen toasted community spirit while her friends' trash cans sat out all week. Something had snapped into place at that potluck. Not broken, aligned. Like a bone finally sliding back where it belonged. Jordan thought about her real life. The promotion she'd earned last month. The book club that actually celebrated her. The quiet balcony mornings that were victories over the dysfunction she tolerated. She made a decision. She would attend Sunday's meeting, but not to apologize. She would go to see if anything could be salvaged from the wreckage of this so-called community. She suspected she already knew the answer. Some neighborhoods are bound by genuine care. Others are bound by transaction. When the payments stop, you discover there was never anything underneath. Sunday arrived too quickly. Jordan pulled into the community center parking lot at 2 p.m., earlier than planned. She still had her access key. Karen had insisted every homeowner keep one for emergencies, though the only emergencies were always the boards. The lot was empty except for Karen's white SUV and a few other board cars. Jordan let herself in quietly, calling out once. No answer. But voices drifted from the small kitchenette where the board always prepped their strategy sessions. She moved down the hallway on instinct, not planning to eavesdrop, but the sound of her own name froze her mid-step. Jordan won't stay mad forever, Karen was saying, voice syrupy with confidence. She never does. Remember when we hit her with the porch light fine? She paid in 48 hours. Another board member, Margaret, the treasurer who hadn't paid dues in 2 years, laughed. Exactly. Guilt works best on her type. Single. Successful. No one to back her up. We tell her the whole neighborhood is concerned about her foundation crack. Dr. Patel owes me a favor. He'll write whatever inspection report we need. Jordan pressed against the wall. Phone already recording. Her stomach turned to ice. The deeper voice of board member Steve chimed in. $20,000 should cover the emergency repair assessment. We frame it as saving the property values for everyone. She'll pay to make amends for ruining the potluck. Plus, once we establish the pattern, we can milk foundation issues for years. Chronic problems. You know, Karen's laugh was pure poison. She owes the community. We'll let her live here. We sacrificed by allowing her single woman aesthetic. It's time she paid us back properly. And if she asks for proof, we delay, distract, deflect. What's she going to do? Demand money back from the entire neighborhood. She'll look like the crazy one. They all laughed. The sound echoed like nails on a chalkboard. Jordan recorded 10 more minutes of logistics. How Steve would clutch his clipboard and look worried. How Margaret would cry on cue. How they'd rally the concerned neighbors they'd already texted. Family tradition. HOA style. When they started ordering lunch, she slipped out, drove 3 blocks away, and sat in her car until the shaking stopped. They had scripted every interaction, every emergency, every tearful email. She wasn't a neighbor. She was their mark. The recording on her phone felt like a loaded weapon. She texted Karen. Something came up at work. Need to reschedule. The reply was instant. Oh no. The board was so looking forward to seeing you. We're all very concerned about your foundation. The performance had already begun. But this time Jordan knew the script, and she was about to flip every page. The next 2 weeks were controlled deception. Jordan played the guilty homeowner perfectly. She responded to texts with measured concern. Asked about the foundation issue, just enough. Even sent a polite, thinking of the neighborhood card that Karen gushed about in the group chat. Meanwhile, she built her case like the CFO she was. First, she opened a new escrow account and stopped every automatic HOA payment. Every dollar that stayed in her account was a quiet victory. Second, she hired a forensic property analyst and a real estate attorney. The report came back. $148,732 in documented selective enforcement over 5 years. Third, she documented everything, screenshots of every fine, email threads. The potluck recording now backed up in 3 locations. The kitchen audio became the centerpiece of a growing file labeled simply evidence. Karen's texts grew frantic. The inspectors are worried the crack could spread. Insurance is dragging their feet. The neighborhood really needs your support. Jordan replied strategically. Sorry. Year-end reports. Hope the inspectors clarify soon. Let me know what they say. Never committing, never refusing, just stringing the marionette string she now controlled. The breakthrough came from an unexpected ally. Her co-worker Sandra's husband was a structural engineer. Over lunch, Jordan casually asked about foundation repair costs in Texas. He laughed. 20,000? Maybe 20 years ago without insurance. With a good policy, you're looking at maybe $5,000 max out of pocket. And most associations have contingency funds for that. They're blowing smoke. Jordan saved the text. 2 weeks after the kitchen recording, Karen called the emergency meeting. The email read, Mandatory Sunday. Important foundation matter. Please don't let the neighborhood down again. Jordan, let the neighborhood down. As if she were the disappointment. She replied, I'll be there. That week she prepared like trial. Organized documents. Backed up recordings. Printed the analyst's report. She even consulted her attorney about Texas recording laws, single-party consent. Thank God. Most important, she prepared herself. Hours with her therapist processing the betrayal, the rage, the grief for the community she thought she'd joined. They've shown you who they are, the therapist said. The question is who you want to be in response. Jordan knew the answer. She wanted to be free. Saturday night, she couldn't eat. She lay in bed replaying every potluck, every inspection, every time she'd been the silent benefactor. How many times had they laughed behind her back? How many emergencies had been rehearsed in that kitchenette? But alongside the pain was relief. The confusion was over. The guilt trips, the selective rules, the constant drain on her finances and sanity. She finally understood. They weren't struggling neighbors who needed help. They were con artists wearing pastel cardigans and community-first pins. She pulled up the recording one more time, listening to Karen's casual cruelty, the board's calculated giggles, their shared excitement about stealing from her. Community tradition. Darling. Well, Jordan was about to start a new tradition. Sunday morning, she dressed carefully, professional blazer, the watch they'd never noticed she bought herself after her last promotion. In her bag, printed statements, the analyst report, phone with the recording queued, and a single envelope prepared for the finale. She sat in her car outside the community center at 5:58 p.m., watching Karen's SUV already parked. They were probably inside practicing their concerned faces. They thought they were directing this show. They had no idea Jordan was about to burn the stage down. She knocked instead of using her key. When Karen opened the door, her face was already arranged in practiced worry. Jordan, sweetheart, thank you for coming. We know things have been tense. The meeting room was set like a courtroom. Good china for coffee. Fresh flowers. Props for the performance. The board sat at the head table. Steve clutched his clipboard. Shoulders slumped. Margaret held a tissue. Karen guided Jordan to the hot seat. Of course, community is important, Jordan said, the words tasting like metal but delivered smoothly. How bad is the foundation? Exactly. Steve actually wheezed. Good days and bad. Mostly bad lately. Margaret squeezed his arm. We're really scared. Jordan. The whole neighborhood could be affected. The performance unfolded in perfect acts. Small talk over coffee. Main evidence where Steve showed doctor photos. Then the climax as dessert approached. Karen leaned forward, eyes glistening on cue. The inspectors say it can't wait. 20,000 to stabilize before it spreads. Insurance is being difficult. But Jordan, this is about protecting everyone's property values, your home included. Jordan nodded slowly. 20,000. Interesting. She pulled out her phone. My co-worker's husband is a structural engineer. He says even major foundation work caps at $5,000 out of pocket with insurance. And most HOAs have contingency funds. Silence crashed over the table. Karen recovered first. This is specialized. Jordan cut her off by reaching into her bag and spreading the printed statements like a dealer laying down a royal flush. $148,000. That's what I've paid this community over 5 years. Documented. Itemized. Every selective fine. Every made-up emergency. Every time you look the other way for your friends. Karen's mouth opened and closed. How dare you? Jordan laughed. The sound sharp and clean. That's rich coming from the woman who just tried to fake a foundation crisis for another 20 grand. She hit play. The kitchen recording filled the room in crystal clarity. Guilt works best. 20,000 should do it. We can milk this for years. She owes the community every word, every laugh, every detail of their con. Steve's fake pale face went genuinely white. Margaret dropped her tissue. Karen looked like she'd swallowed her own clipboard. When the recording ended, Jordan let the silence stretch like a noose. You recorded us, Karen whispered. In our own community center. Jordan smiled. Funny thing about community traditions. Sometimes they need to end. She tossed the envelope on the table. That's a check for $5,000. Final payment. Covers any actual repair plus a little extra for acting lessons. You're all terrible at this. Steve started to protest. Jordan stood. This is the last dime you'll ever see from me. Automatic payments canceled. The HOA ATM is officially out of service. Karen rose too. Real tears this time. You're destroying the neighborhood. Jordan replied calmly. No, I'm just refusing to fund its dysfunction anymore. She gathered her papers, leaving a check. After everything we've done for you, Steve began. Jordan cut him off. You mean raising the fines to the bare minimum legal requirement? Or teaching me that community is just another word for financial exploitation? As she reached the door, the board's voices overlapped. Threats, guilt trips, promises to reconsider the rules. At the threshold, Jordan turned one last time. You know what the saddest part is? If any of you had ever once checked on me as a neighbor instead of a bank account, we wouldn't be here. But you couldn't even fake caring about me as a person. She walked out to her car, their voices fading behind her like the dying whine of a defective golf cart. Her phone started buzzing before she reached the gate. Texts, voicemails, group chat explosions. Jordan silenced everything. The sun was setting over Harmony Grove, painting the sky in shades of freedom she hadn't seen in years. Tomorrow she would change her approach completely. Tonight, she poured a glass of wine and toasted the death of community traditions that should have ended the day. Karen took the clipboard. The vultures circled for 3 days. First came the flying monkeys, neighbors she barely knew suddenly concerned. Margaret left 6 voicemails about devastated property values. Steve sent a long email about neighborhood values and forgiveness. Karen tried the religious angle in the group chat, quoting scripture about loving thy neighbor. Jordan didn't reply to any of them, but she had one more recording to make. Wednesday evening, she sat in her home office, sunset painting her desk, and recorded a calm voicemail greeting. This is Jordan Hale. If you're hearing this, you've reached a number that no longer accepts HOA-related contact. I've chosen to step away from relationships based on financial exploitation rather than genuine community. If you're a real neighbor, you already have my new number. To everyone else, please respect my decision. She uploaded it, then scheduled the mass email blocking the entire HOA list. Thursday brought escalation. Karen showed up at Apex Innovations lobby, disheveled, clutching a tissue box she'd clearly brought as a prop. It's a neighborhood emergency. Jordan's foundation is endangering everyone. Security called upstairs. Jordan watched on the cameras, then calmly told them, please escort Mrs. Thompson out. If she returns, call the police. Her assistant Jerome poked his head in. Everything okay? Jordan shrugged. Neighborhood drama. Nothing that affects work. That evening she found Margaret waiting by her car in the parking garage. Eyes red, makeup smeared. Jordan, please. Just 5 minutes. We'll lose the community center funding. Jordan unlocked her door. Sounds like a you problem. I'll learn from the best. Remember community tradition. Margaret's voice cracked. I'm your neighbor. Jordan met her eyes. No, you're someone who shares my zip code and spent 5 years treating me like a walking wallet with inconvenient opinions. That's not a neighbor. She drove away. Margaret shrinking in the rearview mirror under the fluorescent lights. Friday, she changed her number. The silence was immediate and glorious. No buzzing, no pastel threats, no guilt trip emails, just peace. She sent the new number to exactly 12 people. Her book club, 2 genuine friends, Jerome, Sandra, her therapist, and a few others who had proven they valued her for more than her checkbook. Her therapist had warned about extinction bursts. They'll pull every manipulation tactic they know. She was right. Saturday, a certified letter arrived, Karen's handwriting. The neighborhood is in crisis. Your refusal has caused stress-related health issues for board members. This is your last chance to make things right. Jordan filed it with the rest of the evidence. Stress-related health issues. They really couldn't come up with new material. Sunday came exactly 1 week after the confrontation. Jordan spent it at the farmer's market buying vegetables for one without shame. She had coffee with her book club and told them she'd finally cut off the toxic HOA. They applauded. About time, Carol said. You can't save people who see you as a revenue stream. That afternoon, she sat on her balcony with wine and laptop, writing not a revenge letter, but a simple document, boundaries, what she would and would not accept in any future neighborhood, what real community looked like when it wasn't transactional. Her new phone buzzed, a text from Sandra. Drinks Thursday. My treat. Celebrating your freedom. Jordan smiled and typed back. Absolutely. The old Jordan would have been checking the old number, wondering if they were okay, if she'd been too harsh. The new Jordan was learning something revolutionary. Being single didn't mean being alone. The loneliest she'd ever been was at those potlucks, surrounded by people who saw dollar signs instead of a neighbor. Now, on her balcony in the Texas sunset, she was by herself but never alone. She had real friends, genuine connections, colleagues who respected her, a book club that cheered her victories, relationships based on who she was, not what she could fund. And that was worth more than every dollar she'd saved by walking away, though the money was nice too. $148,000 now earmarked for her retirement, her dreams, her actual life. Community tradition. Darling. Her new tradition was choosing herself. Christmas Eve arrived with unusual warmth for December in Texas. Nearly a year had passed since the potluck that changed everything. Jordan stood in her kitchen preparing a small feast, not for obligation, but for joy. Her chosen neighbors would arrive soon. Sandra and her husband, Jerome and his partner, 3 women from book club, and Dr. Williams, her therapist who had become a friend. The doorbell rang at 6 sharp. Sandra entered with wine and homemade cookies, followed by the others bearing dishes and real smiles. They gathered around the table Jordan had bought with her first bonus, the one that had never hosted a manipulative board meeting. Jerome raised his glass. To Jordan, for teaching us all that sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is the word no. They clinked glasses and Jordan felt that lightness again. The weight of 3 years finally gone. Carol asked, "Any word from them?" "Not for 6 months," Jordan said. The extinction burst lasted about that long. Letters to my office. Even a wellness check claiming I was mentally unstable. Eventually they gave up. Or found another mark. What she didn't say was that she'd hired a private investigator out of curiosity. The report was illuminating. Karen had retired after a quiet vote of no confidence. The new board had discovered the missing beautification funds. Steve and Margaret were quietly selling their houses. The cycle continued, just without Jordan. You know what I realized? Jordan said, refilling glasses. They taught me exactly what community isn't. Dr. William smiled. And what is it? Jordan gestured around the table. It's not rules or fines or guilt. Real community shows up because they want to, not because they need something. They celebrate your successes instead of calculating how to profit from them. They know your favorite wine and your biggest fears, not just your bank balance. Amen, Sanders said, and everyone laughed. After dinner, they exchanged small, thoughtful gifts. No one asked what anything cost. No one hinted at financial troubles. No one made Jordan feel guilty for her success or ashamed of being single. As they left near midnight, Dr. Williams pulled her aside. You've come so far. How does it feel? Free, Jordan said without hesitation. Expensive lesson, literally, but worth every penny. Later, alone on her balcony, Austin sparkled below. Strings of, now perfectly timed, holiday lights mixed with the city glow. Her phone sat silent. No pastel threats. No emergency assessments. No guilt wrapped in community spirit. She thought about last Christmas. How Karen's question had felt like a wound. Now she saw it for what it was, a desperate attempt to make her feel small so they could keep taking. Still single? Maybe. But she'd rather be single than trapped in a neighborhood where community was spelled ATM. She'd rather spend holidays with chosen neighbors than board members who saw her as a revenue stream. She'd rather wake up on Christmas morning in peaceful solitude than surrounded by people calculating their next fine. The temperature dropped. Jordan headed inside. One last gift waited on her coffee table, an envelope containing a travel itinerary. Paris for New Year's. A trip she'd always dreamed of, but never taken because what if there was a neighborhood emergency? What if they needed something? Now she knew the truth. The only emergency had been her inability to say no. The only thing they needed was her bank account. She poured a final glass of wine and raised it to the quiet room. Still single, she said aloud, smiling. But I'm in the healthiest relationship of my life, with myself. The clock struck midnight. Christmas Day, her first truly free holiday. She thought of them briefly, wondered if Karen was still clutching her clipboard for someone new, if Steve was practicing his wheeze. The wonder passed quickly, replaced by something lighter. They were no longer her circus, no longer her neighbors, and that was the greatest Christmas gift she had ever given herself. The Texas stars winked above. Jordan went to bed, knowing tomorrow she would wake to a life entirely her own. No guilt, no obligations, no community traditions that should have died the day the first orange sticker appeared. Just freedom and the knowledge that sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate. Sometimes it's simply choosing to be happy without the people who made happiness impossible. Sometimes it's walking away from a burning HOA meeting and realizing you were never meant to live on that side of the gate anyway. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's discovering that being single at Christmas is infinitely better than being surrounded by neighbors who only gathered to pick your pockets. The end.